Has the West perhaps underestimated Vladimir Putin?
I think the big mistake was not to negotiate directly between the US and Russia for many, many years. And when President Biden came in, that was an opportunity for direct negotiations. We say many things about Russia, by the way. For example, it's often said in our press, you can't trust Russia. They intervened in Syria. And it's true in 2014, 2015. But the United States intervened in Syria years before that, secretly, covertly, in a very destabilizing way. So to my mind, there is absolutely means for negotiations, for understanding each other, for listening to red lines, for U.S. leaders thinking, well, if we were in Russia's position, how would we feel about X, Y, and Z? And I think if we had more of that, and by the way, also true of U.S. relations with China, we'd have a much safer world.
Mm-hmm. How long can Russia's economy survive these sanctions? And how long is it before Russia depletes its foreign and gold reserves?
You know, we can't tell everything that's going on, certainly, but I think the idea that the U.S. and European Union had about what and UK had about what the sanctions would accomplish was way overblown. They even called cutting Russia out from SWIFT the nuclear option at the time. Boy, a real nuclear option is quite different from that. And these sanctions do not have the weight that is assumed by the West. The point is there's a big world market. Russia trades with the Middle East. It trades with India. It trades with China, trades with Latin America. Most of the world trades with Africa. Most of the world did not sign on to the Western sanctions. And so Russia remains in economic trade with a lot of the world. Commodities, especially oil, is very fungible. Gas, not so much because you need infrastructure for the gas, but Russia is actually aiming to build pipelines, and that's quite plausible for making sure that Russian gas can be sold in Asia. Uh-huh. What is on the surface happening is that Russia's saying, well, if the West cuts off all our relations, we will look to China, to India, to Africa, to Latin America for our economic relations. I think it would be, and then the world would be divided into these camps. This would be a very sad and dangerous outcome. It's the direction we're going right now, if not worse. I would like to see this splitting of the world into separate camps to end. We don't really want another period of intense geopolitical conflict in this way, and we should try to take the off-ramp so that the world economy doesn't split in this way.
Why have privatization efforts led to the collapse of huge companies, huge factories in parts of former Yugoslavia, parts of Eastern Europe? And then there are huge differences between the transition of Baltic countries, which have been very successful, and those, for example, in the Balkans.
Well, there's a lot of geopolitics that is involved in this, and this I've written about quite extensively. Countries that were accepted into the Western fold quickly, a country like Poland, where I advised, or the Baltic states, which received financial assistance from the West, open arms and open markets, did quite well. Countries where there was a barrier or you're on the other side of the divide did much worse. And of course, in the former Soviet Union and former Yugoslavia, the breakup of those states was a calamitous economic event because it destroyed financial trade, division of labor, factors that went back many decades, and it was quite sudden. When I advised all of these countries, my main advice was to the West. It was to the United States and Europe. Provide financial backing so that there isn't an economic crisis. When I suggested that for Poland, my advice was heeded. When I suggested that for Yugoslavia as advisor to Prime Minister Ante Markovic, the Europeans and US said, no, we're not going to help federal Yugoslavia. Well, we know what happened. It broke to pieces. Whether that was inevitable or not is another matter, but my advice was not heeded. And then I was advisor to the economic team of President Gorbachev and then President Yeltsin, and actually also President Kuchma in Ukraine. On all three occasions, I urged the Western world, help these countries. The financial crisis is very severe. The collapse of the former command economy is devastating. Help. But they didn't want to help because that was the enemy. Now it was going to be a US unipolar world. So there was no financial help coming. They didn't give financial help to Gorbachev. They didn't give financial help to Yeltsin. It created, it didn't create the mess. It just made it so difficult to address what was a tremendously deep and intense economic crisis. So I resigned because my hope, my expertise was bring help for these countries. But the help came only on geopolitical terms. If you're on our side of the divide, we help you. If you're on the other side of the divide, we don't help you. And that has shaped a great deal of what happened. Also, by the way, just to be clear, geography also matters. If you're right next door to Germany, as Poland is, or the Central European countries, you have a big advantage. That's where foreign investment goes. If you're in the Balkans, you're farther away. If you're behind the former Soviet border, then you're much farther away, both geographically and geopolitically. And that has made a very big difference.
Some people have been calling for a similar program to be applied to Ukraine to help its post-war reconstruction.
I called for that in 1990. I called for that in 1991. I called for that in 1992. It's not just Ukraine. We should be helping with broad economic transformation, also the Western Balkans, also Russia. Let's not make a new absolute divide of pain and misery for the next decades. There's no reason for that. We should be making a world that lives together. And if we talk to each other, we'd actually understand the roots of some of these conflicts a lot more than we do.